Thank you, Jackie. Jacob says, I will not let go unless you bless me. Is that not just a statement, but a way to live, something to hold on to? Matthew 14, verses 13 through 21, this is our gospel reading today. It depicts the feeding of the 5,000. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard that this had happened, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion for them, and he cured their illnesses. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves. Jesus said to the disciples, They need not go away. You give them something to eat. And the disciples replied, We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he said, Bring them here to me. Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke the loaves and gave them to the disciples. And the disciples gave them to the crowds, and all ate and were filled. And they took up what was left over of the broken pieces, 12 baskets full of all of this leftover food. And those who ate were about 5,000 people, men and women and children, and many kinds of people. Amen. And so this is the prosperity gospel, right? Yeah, it's not. Invest a little bit and you'll get a lot. That's what Joel Osteen and others want to tell us. But I don't think so. I don't think so. I'd like rather to interpret the text today as about faithful and hopeful ritual. I don't want to get ahead of Mark, but at the community meal on Tuesday, we had a landslide of people, more than we had ever seen before. They filled up the fellowship hall and they were standing in the yard, and there was just a clamor, and there was a lot of food there, but we were looking at it and wondering. And about the time that the line had gotten halfway through, we were really looking at the food, especially Mark, because he is the mother hen of the community meal, and he's the one who solves problems on the spot. And so he ran downstairs because there were some dumplings in the refrigerator there, and as he was coming back up those stairs, he remembered, oh yeah, and I had forgotten, but I made a whole other casserole. And he added that to the table, and the people went through, and there was food left over after everybody had come through. And there were dishes left over too, weren't there? And we washed those for a couple of hours. There was enough. There was enough. We plan every community meal without knowing how many are going to come. And I've never been to one where there was not enough to go around. And part of that is the way that we take the food together. Everybody is eyeballing the amount and everybody is sharing. There's an economy of trust. There's an economy of leaving some for others in place. In our consumer society, our metrics-driven society, as it seeks abundance, it also promotes a sense of scarcity. I think that we are trained to worry that there's not enough. And so I have to snatch as much as I can for me and for my people. And in doing so, we devastate rainforests, we fell mountains, we rob one another, we take all from people who are already dispossessed, and we dispossess them further. And we do this all in the name of national growth, of corporate growth, even of church growth. We're infected by this metric-driven need to grow and to grow and to grow. We have to get bigger every year. And something happens. Something happens as we plunder and exploit. As we become overconcerned with the size, the quantity of things, we lose their essence. We ourselves become disembodied. We become commodified. We become wills and agents and wheels within a system of exchange. And we become nothing but that transaction. And then we forget the spirit of this gospel. That growth, that multiplication is not an act of will, and it is not informed by hungry frenzy. 50 years ago, in the town where I grew up, the people got together for a barbecue. And there were barbecue chickens steeped in sauce all day long until they were nice and tender, like they like to do at my home. And there was a child there about 4 or 5 years old, and she got kind of carried away with her chicken. She started with a leg and added a wing and then a breast and then a thigh. And then she did it all over again while the adults were watching her finally eat an entire chicken and sort of a fixated relish on how delicious it is, because nothing tastes so good as those first experiences of wonderful food. And the people were watching her and smiling about it, and her grandmother came up to her and said, "Well, did you like your chicken?" And the child said, "No." And I think that people have been making sense of that statement ever since. Ever since. Why doesn't she like that chicken when she gobbled it down? Well, maybe it was preparing us for a Facebook age where we are liking things too much, where our preferences, our experience of essence is boiled down to a transactional button push. Maybe we can experience life without having to signal it in a way that advertises the product, that advertises the joy. Maybe this experience of things is somewhat private, somewhat undescribable, that it belongs to a way of being that we dare not put forth because it is sacred. This is the essence of the earth, of the creation. We don't set things in motion. We are not the ones who produce this summer outside and who will set this fall into a cooling being. Rather, if all we did is wait and watch, still things would change, things would evolve, things would grow. There's a deepest essence deep down in things that is greater than us, and yet that we ourselves contain and that we cannot name, but that it exists in size deeper than words. So let us consider our passage today as a passage about surrendering control. Jesus is surrounded by 5,000 people who are hungry, and he says, don't send them away to the normal economy. He says, let's take this amount of food and not worry about how much it is, and let's feed them. He doesn't say go hire a fundraiser, a baking company, a fleet of fishermen. He doesn't say lose your minds in desperate production. He says, let's do what we know to do. Let's follow our ritual, pass out the baskets of food as usual, and wait and see what happens. Wait and see what the creation does. No strategy, no command to grow. The institution of ritual is all he offers. Do this thing as though it will work. Wait and see. One last story. And it's a story about a church where there were no children. I heard a pastor offer this. It was her personal experience years ago when I first started working in churches. And she said that she went to a church that had no children. And what she wanted more than anything, and what the congregation wanted more than anything, is just to have a few children in the church. Maybe this was the right thing to want, maybe it was the wrong thing to want, but it was a hope that they shared together. And so, without any children in the church, she started offering children's sermons. And this went on for quite a while. She would sit down at the front, and as though there were people under 12 for her to talk to, she would offer a children's sermon, and then stand up and continue with the so-called adult sermon. And for whatever reason, the institution of this ritual brought out of the essence and out of the ether a child and then two children. And then by the end of her tenure there was a children's church, and there were families. I'm not saying that this is what we should want. I'm saying that this is the power of ritual, that if we practice faith, if we practice sharing, if we practice care, that these things will become manifest among us, that as we knock on invisible doors, real doors will open. And this is not a prosperity gospel. This is not a get-rich scheme using the church as a format. It is rather the faith that we live and for which we are willing to accept poverty, to accept a cross, to accept the non-presence of God, knowing that God is here and that God is our giver. May it be so in the name of the one who is, and who was, and who is to come. Amen.